Welcome back, friends and family, to another episode of the Backdoor Cut Show, a show brought to you by the Barn Burner Podcast Network. You can also listen to us on Dash Radio's Nothing But Net channel. We are a Memphis Grizzlies focused podcast, but also we talk a lot of general NBA and other topics. I am Zach. You find me on Twitter at BarnBurnerBro. Today we are going to discuss John Morant winning Rookie of the Year, pretty big deal for Memphis fans, as well as the conference semifinals that are all going on right now. And today with me I have Sam. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Zach. At the Barn Chief, you could find me on Twitter. It's not just kind of a big deal; it's the biggest deal to have Rookie of the Year playing here in Memphis, potential superstar. We'll get into that. Very exciting stuff. Otherwise, the playoffs have been completely unpredictable. Like every time that I turn on a game expecting to see one result, I feel like I get the opposite. And there has been no continuity with any team except for the second we think they're going to be consistent, they lose a game that we didn't think they would. It's been frustrating, I imagine, for a lot of these coaches to figure it out. But I mean, it's kind of the nature of this bubble beast, I feel like. But moved into a new house. There's a lot of little house projects going on. I know you're doing more of the same as well. I feel like the path of life is, you're in your late 20s or 30s, and you buy a house, and then you start doing little projects here and there. Like I hung a porch swing this weekend, and I got to tell you, it was kind of a tougher job than I thought it was going to be. To find the stud in which to anchor the porch swing, or else like you'll absolutely fall if you try to drill into drywall, which makes sense. But I have my stud finder's not great. I feel like I can't trust it. And if you can't trust your stud finder, what's the point of that? And so I had to like climb in my attic and like measure the studs. I was literally like in the prone position, crawling through my above my porch this morning, and finally figured it out, which is nice, and hung the porch swing. And it's too tall, so like you can't sit on it. You can, but your like feet are dangling like you're 5 and you're sitting in a chair. It's too big for you, So we have to get a chain extension, and that's a whole other thing because like you can't add links to it unless you have like the right tools to like bend chains. So you essentially have to buy another section that kind of looks similar, and then another S hook. But all S hooks have different weight bearing like levels, and so that's just a whole thing. So let me just say, like, learned a lot about chain weight and mounting porch swings this weekend, which I didn't think I would. But that's kind of the nature of the beast these days. And I know you're doing some kitchen renos. How's that going?
It's going pretty good. My wife built a whole new set of cabinets. We painted the ceiling, all the cabinets, put a backsplash in, got some butcher block countertop, got a new sink. So it looks a lot different. But I will tell you, it costs a lot less than those dudes at Home Depot were trying to charge. We had someone come and like give an estimate, and we were like, well, we can spend some time and do it for like 10% of the cost. So
Literally
yeah,
10%.
pretty
That's
close.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's like I would not have expected that markup. But I mean, it goes to show a lot of people don't want to devote the time for it. A lot of people find pleasure in little house projects, and I get it. It's satisfying, and like to some extent, it's like we did this, and it's like you get to do everything and pick exactly what you want instead of maybe having some guys that might cut corners. But that's it is a lot of time. So if you don't have the time, but all we got right now is time in quarantine. I feel like
I think my favorite part so far is using the paint spray gun. We got one of those and have been using it. So I think that's probably my favorite tool that we've purchased throughout this project.
I never used one of those before. I imagine it's pretty satisfying though. It like because it's like gives you that nice even coat, and you're like, and it's got to feel like cutting the grass. You can tangibly see your progress and results. And that's always very satisfying when you're like, fuck yeah, man, like this looks great.
That's a great comp. I did, however, underestimate the spray. So my like tape job and covering up there may have gotten some paint on the appliances and some other areas that didn't need them. But next time I know better.
It's just paint, and it's all learning here. That's what we do. So we learn and get better the next day. If I ever have to hang out on the porch swing, I'll do it a little bit better than the last time. Yeah, exactly. And if James Harden ever has to play another Game 7, potentially he'll be better that next time. But here he is in the second round, coming out of that OKC Rocket series. Pound sign segues, by the way. How did you feel about the end of that Rocket series?
That was pretty gnarly. So I was one of those people who hadn't heard of Lou Dortz until Memphis played them in the bubble right before the playoffs. When Dort came out, he's obviously not known as a shooter, and he came out and drilled like 2 threes, and we're like, oh crap, we don't know who this guy is.
It's classic.
But he's a
It's a
Grizz
tale as old
killer.
as time. Yeah, he's the greatest
He's gonna
3-point
be
shooter
the
in
Grizz
history.
killer.
Yeah, he becomes Reggie Miller for like a period of time,
Yeah.
and then we're all furiously like looking him up on Basketball Reference, like who the hell is this guy? And then we not only do we find out he's not a 3-point shooter, but that he's objectively a very bad shooter.
Yeah.
That is not his game at all. And in fact, hadn't really even had that much run in the season. Played a lot of G League time. And everyone that's acting like that knew who he was. Like I've heard a lot of these basketball guys be like, I had him ranked like 32 in the NBA draft. And it's like, I mean, come on, man. Like maybe you did, but you really didn't think he was going to have this kind of impact. So let's not like revisionist history.
Yeah.
I knew he would play these big minutes for the Thunder at this moment. And big minutes he did play.
Yeah, he did average 22 minutes in 36 games this season, but only like he averaged 6 points a game on less than 30% shooting from three. So come on, guys. Like, don't try to make yourself sound like it's that much better than everyone else. We don't need that around here. If you're an OKC fan, I got it. You're gonna know like that'd be like everyone like Conchar having a few big games, and then
D'Anthony Melton, maybe D Melt.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of a do everything guy. If you look at his numbers, it's not eye popping, but he's kind of like Swiss Army knife on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. But like Conchar coming up from the G League, then getting some run. Actually, a pretty decent basketball player. Would have not hated to see him play a little bit more. Get a little more jitty in there. But Dort he's a fascinating case study. So I'm curious how he'll be playing next year when they come back around. But really interesting that he got 30 points in that final game and happened to take the last shot, which is probably not exactly what they wanted, but he was the hot hand. So he took the shot. Harden got the block. The rest is history, but still really fascinating, I think.
The new like terminology we see these guys like in all the cutaways. There's a LeBron commercial where it's him and he says, "We built for this. We built for this, dog." And then that's like the new thing is that I'm built for this. And I think that's supposed to mean that I'm clutch or that I'm ready for the moment or that in the fourth quarter give me the ball and I'll make sure that we win or insert whatever. Like and it turns out, in fact, that as Ryan Russillo tweeted, that like no one's actually built for it. Like everyone says that, but we haven't actually seen that many like truly clutch playoff performances. We saw Chris Paul actually say, we're built for it after he won Game 6, and then started off doing really well in Game 7. But then when the fourth quarter came around, he didn't necessarily do much. He didn't take the free throw, that technical free throw that Gallinari ended up missing. And then he didn't get the last shot. And of course, like maybe you argue that the Rockets kind of schemed and didn't allow him to get the ball. And then there's a bunch of people on Twitter that are saying that the last play was supposed to be for Gallo, and then it ended up going to. So that's why they wanted to get him to shoot the free throw, so that way he was like saw a ball go in right before he had that last shot. But like I don't think Harden played well. Chris Paul had a couple moments, but I don't know if he played like so consistently well as to say that he like outplayed James Harden. And it was kind of a mess of a series, but fun.
Yeah, and that's exactly like a little bit of unpredictability made it a lot more fun. We didn't the Thunder coming in, just them being in the playoffs, they definitely exceeded my expectations this year. Thought they would be one of the teams like at the very bottom, after all the turnover they had. But Chris Paul, really good season. SGA really becoming an excellent player. That was good that they got in there, and that was a fascinating matchup, honestly. So I appreciated that.
Steven Adams, affectionately called Steve-O, makes over $20 million a year. And kind of looks like, I don't know when he turned the corner on being the tough badass guy that I remember, like, baiting Zebo into punching him and getting, suspended for Game 7. He used to be this really kind of pesky badass, and now he's just kind of like the chill New Zealand guy that you see like travel Europe for 6 months. And you know what I mean? Like he just doesn't have that same tone to him, and he's making so much money in a league that definitely does not value centers, and he can't really do anything. He wasn't rebounding particularly well. He didn't really make the Rockets pay at any point. He doesn't have any post game. Like, it's fascinating how this guy got that much money. And it might have been in 2016 that he got that paycheck when everyone got paid, pound sign Chandler Parsons. But like, that's a tough deal. That's a tough contract. I don't really know what the Thunder do going forward. They got a ton of picks. I'm sure they're going to blow it up, trade Chris Paul, and if they can, and then kind of go from there. But I don't anticipate them being back next year. But then again, we didn't think they were going to be back this year.
Right.
What did you think of the Celtics moving over to the East? What do you think of Celtics Raptors?
Oh, now that's a good series. So I've found myself kind of gravitating towards the Celtics. I know you have been on the Raptors and historically have been a Raptors guy. Last season, I jumped on the bandwagon pretty early on. I guess whenever Mark went over there, that's probably about, so it's not super early, but I jumped on the bandwagon about then. But another guy that's really catching my eye in this, Jaylen Brown. I'm really getting into him in this series. It's been just fascinating how I think so. A lot has been talked about with Nick Nurse and Budenholzer. Kind of, they're not obviously not in the same series, but they're coaching the decisions that they're making right now as far as load management for their players. So Giannis throughout the season averaged like 30 minutes a game, which is not very much. That's about what Ja and Jaren averaged.
And we think, the Bucks were blowing out a lot of teams too.
Right.
And then
so he didn't
he wasn't playing out of necessity. It was like they didn't need to have him on the floor. So that, to some extent, that statistic is a little skewed. But now we're seeing that, like, even if they'd been losing,
he's legit,
but apparently would have limited these minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, he legit was still gonna go with that game plan, even though it's in the playoffs. Like, this is in theory what you've been resting for all season, is to go hard in the playoffs. But circling back to Nick Nurse, actually the coach of the year this year. So he's really riding his horses. He's got Lowry, Van Fleet, Pascal, OG. Like, he is riding those guys 38 minutes plus on all of them. And he's really tightened up that rotation and doing what he's got to do to get the Raps, like, get them back to where they are. How long that will last, I guess time will tell. Will those guys run out of steam? Will, Boston and their younger guys be able to keep up and make a push in these last few games of the series? TBD, but I think that's really something to keep an eye on with Lowry and Van Fleet, especially getting all these minutes. One guy who's been kind of weird up and down is Pascal. Some of his games he shows up, and some of them he's just total dud. Like, a lot of people are talking about, is he really ready to be the number one guy on a good playoff team? Now, granted, he's made some incredible leaps over the past few years, and even if he isn't a number one guy on a playoff team, he's still an awesome player. So I don't think that's even a knock on him, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever sort of held himself out as that. Because he's gotten much better the last 2 years, I don't think he's ever been a guy that
wants him to be that, I think.
Sure. But we know the Raptors have won by committee this year. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that the reason that they are so good is not Pascal Siakam making another leap. It's that they play crazy defensive schemes. They have great coach, and they all play really well and together. And Fred VanVleet's been incredible. I mean, he's going to get a max deal. Like, the Knicks are going to max him, or someone's going to max him. And whether that's worth it or not or warranted is a different question. But he's played to justify that level of pay. And I mean, this series has been, I think, a story of momentum. I think that you can point to this series and explain the intangibility that is momentum. If OG Anunoby doesn't hit that crazy ass shot at the end of Game 3 with half a second left,
he was built
Celtics
for it,
up 2. Yeah. If anyone's built for it, then OG Anunoby is. Exactly. He needs to have a commercial where he keeps saying that repeatedly. But it's the Raptors possession. You got Kyle Lowry inbounding the ball, and they have all these tweets about how Kyle Lowry was able to stand further back because there's no fans there with nachos and beer and shit in his way. So he could stand back and actually get a crazier vantage point and angle to drop that pass on cross court to OG Anunoby in the corner. Over Taco Fall, notable 7'4" guy out of the UCF. Shout out American Athletic Conference. And OG Anunoby catches in the pocket. Fantastic fucking pass by Kyle Lowry, which he's gotten props, but that is, I mean, you have to put it right there for him to get that shot off in that amount of time. And then it goes in, and suddenly the Raptors win a game that's only a 2-1 series. They got the momentum, and we saw them win game 4 probably purely based on that momentum. We heard the story of Fred VanVleet going back in the locker room telling everyone they fucked up now. And you know that's how they played in game 4. So you go from a sweep to a dogfight in a matter of like literally a half second on a crazy play. And that just goes to show what momentum can do, and how, like, if you're the Heat, you're kind of kicking yourself for not closing out the Bucks tonight.
That could.
You could have closed them out. They were reeling from losing Giannis to an ankle sprain, which has bothered him since game 3. And you sort of come out a little bit empty in the second half because Giannis isn't coming back. And now it's the Bucks won a game finally, and they won it purely on Middleton, who turned into the player that we'd hoped he'd been all playoffs. So he's got some momentum and confidence. And if Giannis can find his way to come back, then you sort of like give the ball to Middleton and say, hey, do what you did, and then let Giannis figure it out around you. And then maybe we got ourselves a series. But
right,
like if you have a chance to close out a team, you do it. And I know like that crazy Raptor shot is like insane, but it really was an open shot for Anunoby. I mean, it was wide open. And at some point, I'm like, why are we even guarding the inbounder? Like, you just need to play a 5-man zone. Like, essentially, I have like 5 free safeties out there to not let that happen. Because
play a box and 1 on the best shooter on the who you think's going to get the ball, something
right.
like that.
But yeah, the guarding the inbounder is, I don't know if it's necessarily the wisest play. And of course, hindsight's 2020. But yeah, I mean, now you got a dogfight. You got a 2-2 series. It's literally anyone's game. Jaylen Brown had a really bad game 4. So maybe like he's a little shook. They're young, the Celtics. This is the year too where you can get to the finals if you're in the East. Like, there's no one there that's just like so scary. The Bucks, let's face it, are probably not going to advance because no one's ever come back from 3-0.
Right.
So that's just the math of it. And even if they take them to a game 7, like, I don't know how many times that's happened. So I think the Celtics are definitely kicking themselves, and I think their youth showed up a little bit, probably in game 4 when I think they kind of let that momentum swing affect them on the court. Do you have anything else to say about the Raptor series or the Celtics series, or you want to go to you want to talk Bucks Heat, or I mean, I feel like we kind of mentioned it already, but
I think you hit everything on the head there with, like, you got to take advantage. You got Giannis, who was having a hot game too, in 11. Only played 11 minutes, and he'd already made like 8 shots or something. He came out to play today, and he was going to carry his team, and then he goes out, and you let the second, like the number 2 guy, come out and beat you. Like, that just can't happen. You have to continue to play that team basketball and that intensity. But I understand that it's a challenge to always stay up, especially when you have something like that happen. And I don't know what that says about the team, that they couldn't, put it to their throats and knock them out right there. But I mean, Milwaukee does have, Middleton really earned his stripes. He's an all-star. So it only makes sense that he'd be able to do that, and like on occasion, at least, even without Giannis. But Miami, that team has been rolling. Crowder had like 4 or 5 threes, something like that today. Really,
he's playing like we wished he'd played in a Grizzlies uniform, right? Like, and he's playing like the guy that was honored from 3, despite shooting 24 or 25% or whatever he shot with us. Like, still, people treated him like he was Clay out there, because they remembered he could have these stretches. So it's such an interesting thing. I mean, the Heat play fucking awesome basketball. Like, he's getting better shots. That's just a fact. And they move the ball so well. And like, they really are. I mean, I know we always like want to be, myself included, like, oh, they're the next Spurs. But now that I've watched more Heat than I ever have, because honestly, I didn't watch them a lot. I watched the Grizzlies games that we played them, and otherwise, like, I'm not tuning into the Heat much. Not intentionally so. It just worked out that way. Even though I like them from afar, and I always thought the Raptors are maybe kind of the new Spurs. But man, the Heat like move the ball like that too, and they make you like play defense for the entire shot clock and always get the best shot. They got like some insane shot makers, and Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, who's playing like, he's a 30-year-old vet. just hitting the biggest shots and acting like it's no big deal. I mean, like he doesn't even like celebrate like you think a rookie would in that situation. He's just like backpedaling down the court and like next play. And so, that shout out Tyler Hero. He's a killer. And I know that any team would be lucky to have him. And that's an example of like why I'd kind of like to be in the middle of the round, first round this year to add a guy like that. I mean, imagine him on the Grizz, right? Or any team, but imagine just being able to add a piece like that. That's an instant contributor. You could do that in the draft. I mean, you just have to hit. So
you got to have the right system for them. You got to be dedicated to developing them. Obviously, we have Heat culture, so they're known for that. Guys like other finds like Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, who have also been really big for them this year.
Kendrick Nunn, terrible though in the playoffs.
Yeah, did you know he had COVID? That's why he missed some games.
No,
I don't remember. It wasn't a big deal, but then I was listening to, I think maybe it was Woj or someone else's show, and they just dropped that in there. But I would have thought that would have been more widely known. But I think that's why he missed some games at the beginning of the bubble and is probably still struggling to get back in the groove of things from that.
He's like 5 points a game, shooting 14% from deep. A few turnovers.
Non-factor.
Not getting any run. Seemed to have lost Spo's trust. And Spo seems like a guy's going to be probably tough to get that back. Kendrick Nunn, too, notably, transfers from Illinois with a domestic violence charge. So he kind of has a little bit of a checkered past and kind of one of those guys where it's like they bounce around and like the reason that he went when he did in the draft was because of that past. And you hope that he turns out to be more like Allen Iverson instead of like Michael Beasley or something. I'm not saying like Allen Iverson had any kind of past, but he was like a partier kind of dude, like, like a crazy gambler and all that stuff. So you hope that he can manage it. But, that I think like Kendrick Nunn's kind of proven, he probably did not belong in that rookie of the year conversation. And then we'll get to that towards the end of the show. But the Heat look great, man. I mean, they play great basketball. They're fun as hell. Jimmy Butler kind of does whatever it takes. And then he really is like a guy that can generate free throws whenever he wants and seems to come up big whenever they need him, with the exception of today. However, the play that Mason mentioned in our group text, which is that the play down the stretch when Jimmy went to the rim, I think they were down 2, and then he gets fouled, and he gets fouled and kind of tosses the ball over to Bam, probably as an afterthought. Kind of think he was probably about to go to the line, but really what happened was then the ball just went out of bounds. They call the ball to the Heat, so they say that it went off the Bucks. But then because it's under 2 minutes, they can review the play. They didn't call a foul, but they went to review, and then you could see, everyone, God included, can see that there's a clear foul, and they actually reverse the play and then give it to the Bucks. So it's like a double whammy, I feel like the basketball gods were gifting the ball back to the Heat because the foul was missed. But because now we have this weird review system where we can only review certain elements and not others, we actually see the worst possible result of this sort of situation. So to me, it's either you just don't review at all or you review everything. That's the slippery slope of this whole review system and what makes sense and what doesn't and how you justify things. And if I'm a Heat fan, I'm furious because that was when the game swung. I mean, Jimmy Butler's going up to the line to shoot 2 free throws to tie the game. That swung all the momentum back towards the Bucks. And I mean, it was a tough deal because that was such an obvious foul. I mean, they call so many bump fouls on Jimmy going to the rim. They miss one that's straight up slap on the arm.
Right.
It's just, I know it's hard to be a referee, but you gotta feel stupid going and watching how you swung the game because of your mistake. And not only that, but I heard that 44% of challenges this year have been successful in the bubble and then also in the playoffs, which means that 44% of the time the refs are fucking up, such that they go back and watch their mistake and then overturn it. I mean, there has to be clear evidence that they messed up. So it's that's pretty bad. That's kind of not what you want in terms of successful challenges. You'd like that to be the exception, right? The serious exception, not 50% of the time.
5-10%.
Yeah, what are we even doing if half the time you're wrong? That, and that's not. And not only you're wrong, you're it's not a bang bang charge block. It's 50% of the time you are so wrong that you had to overturn it on video evidence. That's tough. But maybe it'll hold refs more accountable. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to do that job, but that was a frustrating component.
The officiating in that series just been tough anyway, especially, I mean, Heat win a game off of Giannis touch foul.
Yeah.
And sending, I think, Butler to the line to just have to make a free throw to win the game after a weird foul on the other end with Middleton getting 3 free throws. So it's been tough to watch. It seems like a lot of games have been, maybe not a lot, but several games have been decided by that when you really don't want to see that.
It's no one does. No, I don't think anyone does. The NBA, the players, the fans, like I don't even think other refs. I think other refs watching are like, oh, like I wouldn't have called that, you know? Like yeah. It's hard to do that job, but I will say that one thing that I know they've focused on this year is the whole shooter space like to land thing, and that's made defending the 3-point line
what are you supposed to do?
Maybe impossible. It might literally be impossible to effectively defend the 3-point line, and combine that with the fact that teams are shooting a record amount of threes per game, and you have just a recipe for disaster. You know, like it's unbearable sometimes the amount of free throws that are shot, and it incentivizes all these guys that are shooting to like kick out their leg, do the thing, sell the play, and so then they're falling. Every single guy that shoots a three, I feel like, falls after he shoots it now. And then if the foul isn't called, which it isn't 50% of the time, and 50% of the time it is, so it's not even consistently called. Yeah. Then if it isn't called, then the guy's like not back on defense. So then you got a 5-on-4 break, and it's just a whole thing. Like, and then it just disrupts the whole game. Like, yeah. And I don't know why. I understand the whole like you need guys to come down so they don't roll their ankle and get hurt, but like there's got to be a middle ground. I don't know how you walk that.
Yeah, it really sucks. And I think of one person, and they happen to be, on the call and make some bold statements. Reggie Miller.
Oh my God, Reggie came in hot.
He said if he was playing in today's NBA, he said he would average 45 points. I believe.
He said 45. Yeah.
He'd probably shoot 45 free throws. I wouldn't doubt that. The way that he's famous for his shooting 3 leg kick, and so no doubt they would run by him and with the air, probably miss him by 6 inches, and he'd find a way to do a 360 and look like the Tasmanian devil or something, and get sent to the line like 5 or 6 times per game. That would just be like that would be terrible. It's already like tough enough. Yeah, people landing on people's feet because they're seeking that out to some extent, and then it becomes a flagrant, and then you got to look and see, you have to review it, see if it's a flagrant 1 or a common foul or flagrant 2. It's like it really does kill the momentum, and it drags a lot of these games on.
And the NBA has always done a good job at creating very tight package. It's not college football. You're not on your couch for 4.5 hours. Like you were watching a 2-hour and 15-minute, kind of very tight sporting event, which I feel like moves very briskly. It's very exciting consistently. It's not like baseball where there's these dead moments. It's not like football where there's just so much time spent. Like I don't know what takes so long in football, but I mean, I guess the play clock is insane in between different plays. It's probably what expands it. But yeah, and then we have this kind of slowing everything down. And I don't know the solution, but I do know that when you start calling fouls like that, it incentivizes, and their players are logical to do it. Like if those fouls are being called, then you should be trying to get them in order to help your team win. But I think when you incentivize stuff like that, it just makes everything worse. And I mean, I can't imagine a situation where like the Memphis City Police like offered to give everyone that reported people that ran red lights like $100 or something. Then like they'd be flooded with people reporting, and it would just suck, Like, and for every extra person they caught running a red light, there'd be like 10 other bullshit reports, and trying to figure out what's what would make the system even worse than it was before. So it's like you got to think about what you're doing when you set out to do something, and I guess they can change focuses from season to season. So we'll see what they do. But another thing that's related to all you brought up the amount of like reviews and how it's extended the game. People were talking about how these coaches are so hell bent on saving their players and not playing them so many minutes. And someone was like, wait a minute, like with the reviews and everything, that there's like an extra 10 minutes of timeout time per game. So like if Giannis plays 42 minutes. That really looks more like his 36 in terms of like what's going on in the game and the flow of the game these days. It was Nick Nurse that brought that up, and because someone like brought up, hey, why are you playing your guys as much? And he was like, well, first of all, it's the only way, it's how we're going to win. And also the reason that I'm justifying it and like thinking about how maybe it's not going to injure them as much is because suddenly there's like 8 minutes of dead ball time that otherwise has never existed. So 42 minutes in a playoff game isn't what it used to be. So that was another like interesting Nick Nurse thing. I felt like, yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. We haven't brought up Nuggets Clippers. I think partly because I kind of forgot that was happening, and then that's the whole reason. Like that's such a weird series, and yet it's 1-1. You know, it's not like the Clippers are blowing them out, and I just do not care about the Nuggets. And so if you're a Nuggets fan and you're as big of a Nuggets fan as we are a Grizzlies fan, like convince me to care about the Nuggets right now.
Are you telling me to? Because I am also in that boat. But
yes, I want you to put on. You got a Nikola Jokic like beer mug. You've got a Jamal Murray blowjob porno, and you're about that life. You go drink IPAs and you go hikes on the weekend, and you sort of care about the Nuggets, but no one really cares about the Nuggets. But you always brag about how you're superhuman at sea level. So now you're a Denverite. Now tell me about the Nuggets.
So first off, you're a Grizzlies fan, right? Well, what's better than a passing big man? You have the best passing big man in the league, those. Nikola Jokic. The offense runs through him. Top of the key, everywhere. He's probably one of the most creative big men passers that we've seen in our generation. We've also got a young guy in Jamal Murray who could pop off for 50 points at any point in time. He can go toe-to-toe with the best in the league in scoring. Running out of stuff. Michael Porter Jr. Okay, broken back. I hear some of you guys over at the Barn Burner really liked him coming out of college and really wanted to draft him high. So I hear. He's not done as well in the playoffs as he did in the bubble, but in the bubble he was really starting to warm up, really getting his sea legs under him, and he's going to be a great part of this team going forward. Only 21 years old. Okay. We have Bol Bol too. He plays a few minutes every once in a while. The Bol Bol's
where you sold me. Yeah. Bubble Bol Bol, which is a triple alliterative, which is fantastic. The Nuggets, I think, are kind of like a more exciting Grizzlies, which kind of makes me a little sad to say because we never had a guy like Jamal Murray. We wish we did. But I mean, granted, we had two guys. Zebo who kind of was like, they don't have a Zebo. I mean, you could probably equate Jokic to Mark in terms of the passing and he doesn't really like to score first, but he can, go for 30 if he has to. Probably a little bit better of a scorer than Mark, but it's just a tough beat to watch those Nuggets play. And I don't know, what would ever convince me to be a fan of them. Jamal Murray seems like a nice guy, and he was good in post-game interviews, and he did have those 50-point games. And I think what makes him the more frustrating is the fact that he's so wishy-washy. He could go for 13 or 50, and that's pretty damn frustrating. But speaking of frustrating, the Clippers, man, I keep giving them rope, and at some point my rope's going to run out. I've got a finite amount of it. It's lassoed over here on the side, and I keep feeding it to the Clippers. And every now and then they have a crazy good game, so I get to pull a little bit back. I'm like, okay, you guys give me some rope back. That's good. But at some point, I'm going to run out of rope. They have not been able to consistently put together 4 or 5, 6 games in a row where they're the dominant team they should be with the personnel they have. And I don't know why that's the case. There's probably a million people that have written a million articles about it. Part of it is they can't actually stay healthy. They can't keep all of them on the same court for a sustained amount of time to actually develop any synergy. And then part of it's Paul. I keep wanting to call him Paul Pierce because it's just that's just Paul Pierce has been roasted so much recently. But Paul George, man, he has not been the guy that we have expected him to be. And I feel like that's part of it too. But I mean, what the hell do you expect to happen in this series?
Poof. I don't know. It's kind of like a bloodbath of mishmash teams. Now, I feel like the Clippers will ultimately emerge, but in those games, I think you have to have the best player on the floor in most games to win. And it could be Kawhi or Paul George, but those guys haven't been consistent enough to pull that off. honestly. Like Murray, out of everyone on these two rosters, he's got the most scoring firepower right now, and he can just put the Nuggets on his back. The series is at 1-1 right now. Just put the Nuggets on his back a couple games, and boom, there's trouble for the Clippers because I don't see Paul George or Kawhi going into that 40-point, 50-point range, especially not more than once between them, maybe. But Murray's shown that he can kind of. Granted, he hasn't maybe faced a level of defender that the Clippers have, with Leonard and George both been able to guard him. But I mean, you'd expect the Clippers to be able to separate themselves if they are the team that everyone's been expecting to be in the finals or in the conference finals since day one. You expect more of them. Sure, they blew out the Nuggets in the first game, but then lost by 9 in the second. I think you've made a good point that they haven't consistently played up to their expectations. Now, I don't know if they're just kind of sitting back and it's hard for them to get up for these games because they do expect themselves to win and everyone else does, but I don't know. I haven't got the warm and fuzzy about the Clippers in this series or the playoffs in general.
And the regular season too. I mean, they're just so talented that at some point you just expect them to put it together. But at some point, past performances exhibits future results, and it's just like we have occasional games to hang our hat on, but us and the Clipper Hive, we can't really we don't have any firewood to throw on the fire really. So it's a wildly frustrating series to really predict or care about because I'm really just wanting to get to the Battle of LA, which I think is most people's Western Conference Finals. But that leads us into Rockets-Lakers. Rockets come out hot, win game one, and totally enforce their will on LeBron's Lakers. And then right now they're actually climbed back into the game. It's 6 minutes left in the third quarter of the game, and it's 77-74 Lakers. So the Rockets are within 3. They were kind of getting blown out at the beginning of the game, and that just goes to show that three-point line is a great equalizer, and no one's ever out of a game, especially when you shoot as many as the Rockets do. Thoughts on that series? I found myself rooting for the Rockets because those guys play really hard, and they're kind of like a weird misfit toy situation where you have a bunch of guys that didn't make it on other teams and make it there, and because it's such a simple system, they do well. I've always liked Harden. Russ, I've always liked his passion, even though he can win or lose you a game. And then PJ Tucker's really he's just a dog, as Verno would say. That's been very fun to watch the Rockets play, and it's kind of interesting to see if this style could win. And I'm rooting for D'Antoni too. I think he's a good coach and a likable guy. But a lot of people are Rockets haters. How do you feel about the Lakers-Rockets series?
Yeah, I think that I fall more into the interested/hater category, if that's a new one I probably created. That Rockets are so firmly in their brand and they've never been able to push far enough. Kind of reminds me of, so they're obviously very analytics based and like Moneyball. So the A's being very analytics based and making all their decisions based on that. And regular season, when you have a ton of games, then the averages always play out in your favor if you've got everything lined up. But when you get to the playoffs, the argument is that everything's a little bit different. And I think that might be the case because coaches have a lot more time to game plan. Whereas, during the season you got 3-4 games in a week. It's hard to have the personnel to really study up on your opponent, get that information to your players, your team, and execute on you spend more time probably game planning how to execute your game as opposed to how to take the opponent out of the game. And all that to be said, that I struggled to see if Houston's going to be able to pull this off long term and really make a playoff push, get to the finals, and especially having to go through a couple of LA teams potentially, because they're going to have their crazy nights. So Harden will have his 40-50 points in a 7-game series. That's probably going to happen at least twice. So you're going to get those two, but he'll probably go cold twice. So then it evens up. What do they do in those other games? Where does that scoring come from? Is Russ going to step up in that situation? Or is, someone like LeBron or Anthony Davis going to overshadow them? Now, I think that's kind of what we'll end up seeing.
That's been the surprising thing, though, is that the games that for example, Game 7, Harden has a terrible offensive game. He's like 17 points. He's like 4 of 18. Pretty bad by all accounts. And they managed to win that game. This team has found a way to win when Harden hasn't performed to the crazy scoring levels that we've seen him do in the past. And I think that's a testament to them finally fully buying in to they sold the cars, the house, and they bought a Volkswagen van, and they're traveling the country in small ball, man. Like they sold the farm and they're betting on it. They traded Capella. They've never fully done it. So I think you kind of like throw out all those different past Rocket series and as, kind of 80% into the small ball, which if you're not 100% into it, you were destined to fail. So that's kind of what Morey is expecting. And the comparison to A's is apt. They're fully buying in. We'll see what happens. However, Daryl Morey is not Brad Pitt in terms of handsomeness. He's kind of a pudgy white guy. Shout out Daryl. Hope you're not listening. Big fan. So we'll see what happens in the series. But I think what we can expect is that we don't know what's going to happen, as we've seen with every single one of these series. But we'll be watching it with great interest and see where it goes. Let's talk about Rookie of the Year. It's an exciting topic here in Memphis. Our own Demetrius Jamel Morant was awarded the Rookie of the Year trophy, the second in Grizzlies history after Pau Gasol was awarded the trophy in 01, 02. So not a lot of Rookie of the Years in the franchise, and that's also not very surprising based on our draft history. So that was really cool to see. Ja did a special with the TNT guys, the Ernie and Shaq and Kenny and Charles, and really got a chance to see the Morant household, which, by the way, what a fucking situation he's got out there in Collierville, wherever he lives. A lot of land, a giant pool, a concrete basketball court, which I know he had poured after they moved in. And he's got a really good family unit there. And it was exciting to see him win that. And I think kind of like hopefully portends what we can expect from him in the future, because most Rookie of the Years turn out to be, if not superstars, multiple-time All-Stars. What were your immediate thoughts when you saw our boy Ja take home the gold?
I mean, we've been expecting it for a while. I've been definitely waiting as they've trickled out. Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year. Finally got here. It seemed like it took forever, just because I wanted to see like who was going to be weird enough to not put Ja first on their ballot. Sure enough, there was. So there's 100 voters. Morant got 99 first place votes. None got 0, and Zion got 1. Which Morant and someone asked him, how do you feel? And he's like, please tell me who voted for Zion on that one, because I would love to send them a DM and tell them that I'm going to use that for motivation, which is like, sounds like an MJ thing or Jimmy Butler, where they're like just thrive off that. But Morant, like total points, he ran away with it. Kendrick Nunn actually got second in overall points because he got 56 second place votes compared to Zion's 37. But coming in fourth, we got to give props to Brandon Clark, who got 6 second place votes and 32 third place votes. A pretty distant fourth, but still top 5. I think that you could have argued he could have been 2 or 3, but still pretty legit to have 2 of the top 4 rookies on your squad. Like, that is a really good feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's testament to drafting. The whole, the guy that picked, or girl that picked Zion number 1, someone also picked brain fart, the RJ Barrett, the Knicks rookie, with the third pick. And a lot of people think that ballot was just picked 1, 2, 3 in the draft. I don't know, honestly. Like, if you don't fill out let's assume you don't fill out your ballot, like you forget or something, or like let's assume this person had like some sort of crazy personal emergency, and I don't know, like just didn't get around to it, or I don't know, shit happens, and maybe the ballot defaults to that. Like if nothing's filled in, I can't imagine that it would, but I also can't imagine doing that if you actually You just Google,
What?
man. Just Google. That's what we fucking do. We're podcast guys. All we do is Google shit and say what everyone else is saying. To some extent, like if you're picking Kent or RJ Barrett number 3, that's just wrong. Like the Zion things, like that comes down to whether you think he played enough games. And there's multiple schools of thought on that, And some people think that like his performance in the 19 was so good that he deserves second place votes. Sure, whatever. And some people are like, no way, I'm not even putting him on my ballot. And that's how you get Brandon Clark kind of sneaking up there. But like it didn't make me mad as much as it did like, what does this person have a vote for if that's what's going to happen?
How are they getting paid to watch and write about basketball? Like that's just kind of disgraceful. Like what? Of course, we will get to find out who they are. That's the best part,
right?
Because Rachel Nichols tweeted that once all the announcements of the awards come out, we'll get to find out who that is, which is going to be exciting. And the disclaimer was it was not her, so she's got that covered. We appreciate that much.
And I mean, we'll like we know that Memphis fans, if faced with the Twitter handle, will absolutely destroy this person. And it'll all come from a place of like that we have is like small market energy and excitement that we have this guy on our team. But realistically, this person deserves it. I mean, I think they probably deserve more criticism just for being bad at their job, not as much like who they voted for. But that's such a clear mistake when you're the 1% that didn't do what everyone else did. You're not defying like and having some sort of platform. You're just an idiot, and that's gonna suck when that comes out. If I were that person, I would have already admitted to it and gotten out in front of it. I would have for sure been like roasted myself or done something. And that maybe they're small time and we just haven't seen that tweet yet. But I have to imagine it would have gotten retweeted and shared out there if that person came out and said it. But I'm not envious of that voter who surely knows that there's a whole city coming for him. Or at least coming for his mentions for a long period of time. And after every single good jaw game, some asshole is going to tweet him. So he's going to get tweeted for the next however long Jaw's career is, which you hope is 20 years. But that's going to be a tough hang for that person.
It's going to be tenfold the Twitter backlash of a Gary Parrish poll attack. That's what it's going to be.
Oh yeah, and those people can't come back from a Gary Parrish poll attack.
Yeah,
those people are left for dead, and Gary's always right himself. So when someone's wrong, it's just particularly bad. So that's why he's given the superiority power to call them out. Gary Parrish is the hero we need right now, but not the one we asked for. Let me be clear. I live in Olive Branch. And I talk about Memphis as if it's my home, but really I'm from Mississippi. Anyway, it was cool to see that though. I mean, you get hype. You're like, our city's got this guy. Like he's getting love from everyone. Like celebrities are straight up tweeting him. He's got like a legit social media presence. He's nearly got a million Twitter followers, and he gets like tens of thousands of retweets on his tweets, and he's got we heard LeBron say it like Memphis got one, and it's true, we did. He's the first guy that is a legitimate chance that he's like legitimate superstar in terms of commercials and notoriety and like getting us on TNT and also lifting us to the heights maybe we've never been before, which is what makes it particularly exciting, what makes building the team out also exciting. It's kind of like a sandbox you're in right now, where it's hard to make. I mean, if Chris Wallace was in charge, he'd find a way to make mistakes still. But it would be hard to make mistakes to be bad. And I say all this knocking on wood hoping everyone stays healthy, obviously, but you can't ever predict that. You just can't. Like that's right. Trying to predict that's impossible. There's people that never get hurt and you're like, how'd that happen? And then people that seem like they'd never get hurt and they're chronically injured. It just makes no sense. So we'll see, but it's great to have one here in Memphis. And like he carries himself already like a guy that'll probably be an all-star in year 2. What would be your prediction for year 2 job? Which is kind of a weird deal, right? Because we got kind of year 1.5 job in this bubble in which he upped his assist to 10 assists per game and upped his points a few. Didn't shoot as well. And like I don't think made a leap that we'd want to see in year 2 necessarily, but
Right.
this is going to be kind of a weird deal where year 2 isn't a classic year 2. Really, year 2 should be starting, in a month.
Right.
But it's
Crazy to
not,
think
and it
about.
won't start for 6 months probably. So it's like this weird kind of delayed situation, and he will turn 22 during year 2, instead of like year 1 being over before he even turned 21. It's like this weird kind of delayed deal. So what would be your expectation, Zach, for Ja?
As far as like production per game and that kind of thing.
Everything. I mean, and, I'm sure you thought about it.
Yeah. So he averaged almost 18 points. I'd like to see, over 20 would, I think, be an improvement. He's already putting up 7 assists. So it's honestly hard to improve too much on that. Maybe
That's
a
who you
little
put
bit
around
more.
him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if we had guys that could knock down shots, he would average 10 this year.
Yeah. Because he would have someone to actually say if we had more of the Grayson Allen action like the bubble, then I mean, Ja's going to get 1 or 2 assists just straight up off that guy who can just shoot threes when after Ja drives in and everyone collapses on him. But the area that I expect him to improve on the most, especially after the bubble, after his hand gets healed up, is in 3-point shooting. I think that right there is going to be the key and kind of the gate for how good of a player he can actually be. Because if he's not able to shoot the 3, then that takes so much off the defense. They can very easily game plan for him. Not easily because he's still athletic and he'll get to the hoop somehow, but that's probably several attempts per game that he's not going to be able to just make his way into the lane. You even see like Miami building their wall to keep Giannis out, and obviously Ja is a lot smaller. So like in a playoff series, that could really handicap Memphis if Ja hasn't developed that 3-point game just by 4 or 5 points. He shot 34% this year, which is, fairly respectable. But if he can bump that up 4 or 5 points, then that's going to open up so much for him and just so much for the entire team in general. So that's the area that I think I'm looking for him to improve the most. Another impressive thing he did this year was his clutch scoring or his fourth quarter scoring. He willed us to multiple games this year. I think back early in the season to Charlotte game where he goes in, plays great in the fourth quarter. We got Brooklyn game, makes a huge block on Kyrie. Multiple times he did that. I would look for him to continue to be that clutch guy that we know that we can go to and take us home in those situations.
Yeah, echoing all that too. I think I can't expect him to make a shooting leap that as much as I want him to probably in this year. I definitely want him to shoot it more consistently with the regular season and not this bubble experience. And of course, we saw an injured hand, so maybe that was part of it. I think the tangible way that he's going to get to scoring more is more free throws per game. Right? This season, he shot 4.6. He attempted 4.6 free throws a game. I'd like to see him get around 8 or 9, kind of double those per game. I think that immediately opens things up. It gets other teams in the bonus quicker. It just helps the team win and score in situations where our offense can get stagnant. To me, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to generate free throws automatically when he wants to. And he's quick enough. The whole thing about guys going under screens, Draymond, who's been great on TNT, shout out Draymond, by the way, pointed out in that the play-in game, I thought he was tweeting during it, and he said all these guys going under the screens are just allowing Ja to get downhill and right past you because you're allowing him to create space, and he's not going to use it to shoot. He's going to use it to drive past you. He's still in the stage where he can do that because he's so athletic and fast. So with that, he gets past you, and then he should get fouled. And I think as he gets more popular, he'll start getting the superstar calls. But Jason Tatum, that's the big leap he made, is he doubled his free throw attempts. And once you start seeing the free throws go down, everything starts going down. You start scoring more across the floor as well. So that would, to me, be the more realistic jump if I'm Ja, is to double that free throw amount. But it's exciting times, man. You got anything else on the NBA or Memphis or, kitchen renovation?
No, I can definitely not offer any tips on kitchen renovation. I'm definitely my wife's the planner and the foreman for that project, but I can wield a mean paint gun.
That's good to hear. That'll be a skill that follows you for the rest of your life. If I ever need a paint gun, I'll call you. So that's good stuff.
If I need a porch swing,
Yeah,
I don't have
I'm your
one,
guy.
so that may
I'm
be
gonna
on my
crawl around in
list.
your
I don't
attic
know.
though. So you might forget I'm up there, and then like you pull it down the next day, and I've like crawl down like a vampire and hiss at you. But that's a whole that could happen. Yeah, yeah, whatever. So you can find us at the-barnburner, the website where we write articles and host a lot of our podcasts. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcasts at the Barn Burner Podcast Network. And then, of course, if you're listening to us on Dash Radio, shout out Dash Radio, shout out Nothing But Net Channel. Check us all out, and we're excited to be a part of the program.
Until next time, see you later.